metrics, my job is much easier. I don't have to show you the ROI because the clever tab will take care of the money part. But I'll get you connecting to the next talk, which is about misinformation. This was about money. And in between, I think information forms the correct bridge. So there is a lot of information that is resident in the social networks, and that is my area of interest and area of research. I research on e-commerce, social media, and healthcare. And my current work I'll be showcasing. Those of you who were present yesterday, I had a preparatory talk to lay down the concepts and the theory behind the social network analysis. Today it will be more broad in terms of the audience interest, and it will be more around the applications. There aren't too many applications that I have in my research. This thing which are focused on, let's say, the business side, but there are say lessons for the marketers in the audience who want to apply these lessons in terms of identifying influencers, identifying the topics from the analysis that we do. So there are five case studies which I'll be doing. All of these are my work along with some of the co-researchers in a couple of them. Now, I did some work long back in 2014 on social network analysis on Twitter. That was around the Indian elections. Then there was work around Bollywood around the same time that I'll be presenting. Thereafter, there is current research, which is work in progress. So it is still kind of confidential till it is actually published. And I'll only be able to share some teasers to kind of get the talk motivated or get the discussion around those topics. There will be also one research which is specially for today's say talk, that is around the lawyers who are there on Twitter, their social network analysis. That is as part of LawNet or LegalNet. That is just a temporary term that I have given it for the understanding. Now, beyond that, I'll also use these as backdrop to touch upon what goes under the hood, what kind of activities we do as analysts or researchers or uh, data scientists, and that is where data collection, preparation, or the tools used, those kind of things I'll be. So those kind of tools I'll be using or I'll be touching upon so that there is learning around those aspects as well. So let's jump into the first of the research topics that I have for today, and that is around the Indian politics 2014. Now, for that, there was a good amount of work to be done. We were not having the kind of AI and ML tools that we have today. We didn't even have the natural language processing to the extent. But yes, there were early days of getting to sentiment analysis and getting to do, and even the tools were not as good to do the social network analysis. They were still kind of UI, which was DOS based or command line based, and it took some effort to get the analysis done, but it was a good time because the social media for the mass use through the elections was warming up, and 2014 was one of the first elections where it was huge amount of traffic on Twitter for the election. So that was the interest point. There was a lot of planning that went in. I had to plan out months in advance, even for 2019 elections. It is months in advance. The reason for that is that Twitter API gives you data in full flow, or the fire hose, as we say, or the streaming data. It is given to max numbers only when you are capturing it live. The moment you start capturing it post event, then the percentage availability or even the period of availability as per the API starts getting restricted. Of course, there are paid options, but then those are meant only for large corporates, or their pricing schemes are that way not very say researcher friendly. So I could plan it in advance, and then when you plan it in advance, you have to also plan out that if you are tracking politics, which user accounts you will track, what topics you will track, or if there are topics you cannot anticipate, what are the workarounds that you will use to do that tracking real time to be able to capture the live streams. So all that kind of planning goes in. I even had a serious data loss incident. One drive crashed, so there is a lot of planning also required because that cannot be recovered, and the whole research plan can go haywire, or whatever analysis you are wanting to do. It all depends on not being able to miss out the opportunity to collect data. So if it is around an event, and like I have another analysis on the Me Too movement in India, that movement also will not present itself in that shape and form again. So the world has moved thereafter. So it is very difficult to get back in the time machine and capture anything. So you have to be creating those backups in terms of redundancy or backup to data or capturing the data at multiple places so that you do not end up getting surprised. There is a very good Twitter API, which there are good libraries in Python, which make it pretty easy for anyone who is interested and who has basic understanding of, say, Python as the tool, or even R or other packages are there which allow you to capture straight from Twitter API. And Twitter is a kind of platform where most people, or the purpose of being on Twitter is that you want to keep your account public. There are closed accounts, but unlike Instagram, Facebook, where you want to close your account and keep it only to your friends, Twitter, everyone wants to keep their account public. So that gives us a good, rich data set in terms of the availability, because almost anyone who is on Twitter and who matters has to have a public account and be available in terms of their data on the public timeline. So the API is good, and the period we have to plan out from what dates you want to you want to capture, and there are certain workarounds you will have to do, whether it is required for data cleaning or some missed data or some missing fields, or some kind of opportunity that you may have missed. So those tricks you learn as you start dealing with these issues on day to day basis. So, and there are plenty of insights around that as well, which as things progress we'll keep sharing in the appropriate context. Data preparation, I will not go into detail. This is the usual stuff where you will convert from JSON to a spreadsheet and then do statistical analysis, try to resolve some missing values or interpret those. And there are also enrichment of data that will have to take place, because you want to look at certain aspects like gender or location, or which may not be available in the data directly, or even the political affiliation you may want to interpret. So those things you may have to do as part of integration. Increasingly, we also use a lot of machine learning. So for that, if you do a classification exercise, you may have to label the tweets for a particular topic, or for a particular ideology, or for particular say sentiment. So if you're doing those kind of classification exercises, you may also have to end up doing some of that work. Analytical tool wise, there is the routine stuff, which is the basic statistics, the hypothesis testing, time series analysis, regression, and those tools which you use. Along with that, good amount of natural language processing, because you're dealing with content. There are good algorithms which I have seen from 2014 to 19 in terms of accuracy. Like there was also mention about the word to vec and item to vec in the previous talk. Those are the kind of techniques we also use, because they help analyze the content per se, and do the sentiment analysis or topic modeling using NLP. There is also the network analysis, which is the core what I'll be presenting today. There are specialist tools, and as again comparing from 2014 to 19, the volume of data has exponentially grown, and some of the tools I used back then are no longer useful. I have to deal with big data. I'm dealing with today some 30-40 million tweets captured for the Indian elections 2019, and that amount of data is just not manageable with what I used to have back then. There is also a good amount of visualization to be done in the field of social network analysis, because that is almost not even half, but 90% of the message. You cannot really start getting into the numbers for getting your message across, and you will find good amount of visualization work today also. Not very great, but at least for getting the insights, you have to start with the visualization, and thereafter you can keep making them more fancy. Now, beyond this, you have to also get into the domain. So I had to get into the gender studies for the Me Too world, or the Bollywood for the Bollywood social network analysis, and of course for politics, one has to keep track with the developments, and also the way people are using social media for their political ends. There is the overall integration of all this, and as you would see, the landscape is too vast, and you have to also collaborate with others. There are co-researchers, there are others who help you with the data exercise, and that's how the so when the whole thing finally takes shape, it looks very dirty. It looks very messy. It doesn't really convey much insights, and you have to start doing work on that. Even after you reach the first stage of analysis, there is still a lot of work left. So when you get the first look of the network analysis, this is what it looks like. So I've still put in some things here. What I have put in here is that there is an orange color which indicates one political affiliation, which is indicated through the text analysis of what people mention in their profile. Now, people may mention in their profile words like member of BJP, or Congress, Zilla Parishad chief, or some other indirect, say, hints as well, nationalist or liberal, or some other kind of clues, which through, say, known profiles which are of known ideology, and then you have to use NLP and other analytical techniques to also assign the ideology to the accounts. So that is one set of the split using the color. So each of the dot here is one person on Twitter. Now the size of the dot indicates the number of retweets or number of followers, that is depending on the modeling that you will use. So here it indicates the number of followers you have, and also then you have further there are you have to also decide what categories you want to have. So I have BJP, and in 2014 Aam Aadmi Party was very active. Except for these two parties, Congress, even Rahul Gandhi himself or any other big leader from Congress was not there. Shashi Tharoor was the only big name who had large following, but then he wasn't very active and very uh, top in the hierarchy to engage as much. But yes, he figured in there. And then there were party spokesperson, party social media heads, and those people. Along with that, if you see the black dots and the yellow dots, they will also be the media houses and journalists, because all politics also revolves around these political analysts or journalists, and also the media handles like of the Times Now, Republic TV, or NDTV, or these channels. They will have their own handles. Now, still, despite seeing the color, despite seeing, and then these algorithms are used which organizes them logically close to each other, so that the network connections between them are shortest. So these are the algorithms which will do that organization, and logically they will bring all the BJP gang together, because they interact most often with each other, or they retweet each other often. So in that visualization network, they will get aggregated together. Now you have to intelligently use all dimensions available. So we will in fact, yesterday we covered all these, that when we have these dimensions available, for example, using color, I am indicating the party affiliation. Using the thickness of the connection between two nodes, I am indicating how often they are retweeting each other. Using the direction of the arrow, I can indicate who is retweeting whom. And then using the layout in XY dimension, I can also logically arrange them. There are also other ways to add richness, but then you have to also reduce the clutter. Like if you see this, it is a very good visualization to start with. Feel happy, okay, finally you got one result, but it is good for nothing if you have to do any reasonable analysis. So you have to do more to it, and that is using the weights, using the filters. So you will have to filter out from this based on some of the metrics that we use in network analysis, and we'll come to that. There is also use of relationship types. So I may have a different network for retweets, different network for the relation type of following each other, different network for the replies, and then each of these I may aggregate together to come up with a weighted, say, relationship, or I may model these networks separately. And then there is a lot of, say, trial and error, playing with visualization, going back and forth with the domain experts, trying to interpret a result, and then you get to some stories. So this is what, then when you distill all this and then you come to this, there is a set of stories that you get, or set of insights that you get. So this is just a indicative list of insights. This is not comprehensive, but this is an offshoot of the research work. The actual research paper dealt with a research question which may not be very interesting to the audience, but those who are following politics or are on Twitter and understand these issues, then you will be able to interpret some of these insights and appreciate the value of social network analysis. So starting from zero on bottom right, and it goes clockwise up to the 10th research number 9. So if you see point 0 and 1, you notice that these are, so that time Rajdeep was working with IBN, CNN IBN, and Sonia was working with NDTV. And you find that Rajdeep retweets IBN Live often, IBN Live retweets Rajdeep often. But yes, they are not embedded in the network of others. So pretty much like they were criticizing Congress at that time, or not pro BJP also, but whatever, they were, the network threw them as outsiders. The only close interaction they have to and fro was with their respective media channel. In Sonia's case, she was retweeting NDTV often, but she was not giving her own thoughts, which NDTV was retweeting. But in Rajdeep's case, he is more vocal. So you could see that it was back and forth, and both of them were heavy retweeting each other. Coming to insight number 2, I have blanked out the name because I don't want any controversy around the names coming out of this. So some of the names in these presentations I have blanked out. So this person, whatever X, and Prasanna, they both have thick arrows going back and forth, and the thickness of arrows is exponentially proportional. So what that means is, by and large, anything that X tweets, Prasanna is going to retweet, and anything that Prasanna tweets, X is going to retweet. So this is known as reciprocity. Reciprocity means I want my social profile to look good. I need too many retweets. And you also want it to look good. Let's both retweet each other. Both of us will rise. But effectively, both of them may be not tweeting much sense. So we don't know whether it is sense or not sense. But the reason of their rise could be that mutual support or the reciprocity. So that is the one of the thickest arrows, but they are not like Narendra Modi, who is also having thick arrows, everyone retweeting him. But then he was the tall leader. So because of that, uh, what you see at Inside 5, everyone is retweeting Narendra Modi. And for the BJP set, uh, that was one source of, say, big inspiration and also influence. If you see this dot 4, now dot 4 is a claimed journalist, but then embedded deep into the network of BJP. So what that indicates is that everyone, journalist, will claim I am neutral, but then if you post content consistently, and this is not one tweet, two tweet, five tweet, this is based on a pattern which has emerged over thousands of tweets, or almost all the tweets that this particular person would have put out on Twitter. So if all that is found worthy by others to retweet, and that happens most often, then that kind of puts a question mark on the neutrality of the particular journalist. So that is insight number 4, 5. Coming to 6. Now, Shazia Elmi was an interesting case that time. Just after the election, she resigned. Just after the election, she resigned from Aam Aadmi Party, and that blob there, that is all the Aam Aadmi people. So one thing to notice is all these networks, they are clustered around their own people. So people will only retweet each other. Social media acts like an echo chamber. People only want to hear their own voice, and that is a big criticism. There is no engagement gainfully in conversation, to understand others, or that was the original promise of social media. But then these three networks, if you see the top side, the Congress, and then Aam Aadmi Party on left top, and then the BJP at the bottom. Now these are all in their own silos. The only connection, if you see, is ANI news, that is between the Congress and BJP, and that is because when a news house puts out something in favor of Congress, or if Congress interpretation of that event is in their favor, they'll retweet that. But if it is in favor of BJP, they'll retweet that. So that's the only connection. And ANI being the what do you call that, syndicate news service, so they are the first ones to put it out. That's why they are the only connection between the two networks. Coming to Shazia Ilmi back. So Shazia Ilmi left the party just after the election, but the signs of that were available on social media much prior to that. So while others were putting out content which party handles were retweeting, what Shazia was doing was the reverse. She was only retweeting what the party handle was putting out. There wasn't much coming from her as way of contribution, though she is very articulate, and in the earlier period she has been vocal on social media. But then during that period preceding her exit and preceding the election, and later on things kind of became obvious that she wasn't too happy. So same way in Congress, if you see, Rahul was not there. There are some other names, but by and large, the Congress handle is the one putting out some stuff which is just about, when we see the content, it is uh, regular stuff, not something which kind of charges up their cadre, or so that is based on the content part. But more importantly, here the leaders are getting retweeted. There, the bulk of the action is centered around the two party handles, which is the With Congress and INC India, which were getting retweeted. So, which is not really great leadership in terms of what is happening there. Now, switching on, the next set of visualization is around the replies. So that was the retweet network. Now this is the replies network. Again, if you see, there are few names which I have blanked out, but then they are outside the component which has the bulk of the people. So the bulk of the people are from BJP. They are replying to each other, and guess what? When I apply sentiment analysis to it, I realize that an orange dot trying to interact with the three Aam Aadmi Party people, the sentiment was negative. So it is those trolls who keep kind of poking and keep kind of troubling. And so it is embedded in the BJP network, but then they are tasked, or they are kind of continuously trolling or continuously giving out the negative sentiment while continuously tracking those specific Aam Aadmi Party leaders. There is also another BJP handle, or BJP supporter handle, which was tracking a Congress leader, and that was the other inside there. So once we combine the network structure and the sentiment analysis, then a different kind of insight and interpretation can be obtained. And this, I mean, from then to now, has increased exponentially. This means this kind of negative behavior on social media, and that is one of the hottest research topics also today, because the things like fake news, trolling, abuse, misogyny, harassment, or surveillance, the manipulation, all those things are now much more prevalent. So I have more, say, negative sentiment lines in 2019 as compared to harmonious conversations. So we Indians like three things: politics, Bollywood, and cricket. So cricket, my fellow researcher had picked up, so I didn't do research on that. But then Bollywood interested me back then. So what I did then was that IMDb is a repository of all movie-related information, and from IMDb I could scrape data and collect data for all the movies released between 2000 2009, and using their box office data, we ranked them on the collections. And then whoever is part of that movie. Okay, so they are all co-participants, and each co-participant becomes a relationship or a connection. So there is a good amount of research around co-actors or co-participants, or people occupying stage at the same time in a theater show like Broadway theater shows, or people participating in a project together in an IT company. Now, these are all environments where people come together for a professional interaction or a productive, say, job to do, and then they go away. So in Bollywood also, uh, we took all these movies. This is from 2000-2009 period, and these are all the sound directors, the cast, the actors, the singers, and then the producers, fight stunt director, all the top names. Of course, there is a full set of others who support them, but all the top 8-10 departments of a movie, and then all the names from that, whoever is in which movie, that was taken. And then finally we, to filter the network, we took the I have taken the top 30 names from top 20 movies. Now what emerges is that from the top 20 movies, these 30 players, they all are very heavily connected and very heavily clustered together. So what this means, this degree 24 and 29, that out of those 30 people, the maximum one person was connected to with is with 29. Now that connection means through one of the movies in those 20 or more movies, he or she has worked with all the other 29 in one of the 20 movies. And the least is 24, which is itself a very high number. So what this means is that everyone is connected to everyone, which is what you see from the network as well, that each individual connected to another individual basically indicates that on one movie they would have worked together. If the thickness is more of that line, that means they have worked together on more movies. And those numbers were there in the previous slide, that who is worked with on which movie. And then we can also get to the average degree and median degree. Basically 27 to 28 is the average to median. That means everyone is connected to everyone through one movie or the other. So at least when it comes to the top movie, now there can be two competing hypotheses as to what is the cause of it. One cause could be that these are all great creative people, so they come together and that's why the movies are hit. The other could be that we are driven by star value and we are driven by personal relationship, and that's why we work together, and then those movies just click because those people are there, rather than we having much to choose from. But those are the causality part, which we'll have to do a more domain centric analysis or other say analysis to get through. But in terms of clustering and in terms of connection, it is a heavily clustered say set of 30 people driving the top 20 movies. Now within that, these are the names, and then this is where the individual networks of the top four names of that period, 2000 to 2009, these are the four names who were kind of common to lot of hit movies. So Manish Malhotra is the designer, Udit Narayan and Sonu Nigam, you all know. So these are the people who were connected in the sense that they had few, say, common people whom they worked with, and they had out of 20, Udit Narayan and Sonu Nigam had 11 hits each out of the top 20 over the full decade, and Shah Rukh Khan, Manish Malhotra, they had 8 hits each. So now comes the interesting part. Recent times I have seen these headlines, and even those who are regular Bollywood watchers or just out of common awareness, you would know the people like Ayushman Khurana or Vicky Kaushal or Rajkumar Rao. These people are delivering hits. These people are delivering hits also because the content is king, so to say. Or that is what some of these recent conversations on Bollywood are saying. So my hunch is that if I now collect data from 2010 to 2019 and the previous decade was more around just a clustered set of few people who generated hits around a closed network. Now, when I collect data, the spread will be much wider, and there won't be like one of the quotes here is that content is the new Khan, or the it will not be that personality centric or centric around just four or five people to deliver the top hits. There will be a much wider say set of people contributing to say the top movies, and also their related connections may be showing a different pattern. So this was the second analysis. Again, switching gears, moving to a completely different context of social media using for social movement. So that was Me to India. This is a current research. I'll only be able to share a teaser and some quick insight into it. But beyond that, there is still the publication left. So I have to uh, hold on to some of this stuff. So this is where the one of the analysis and filtered and all that already done. So what you see here is that it is centered. So this is the core of the group. So there was a large data set that we took. Within that, we took all the influencers. Within the influencers, I have to filter out to just get the top names, because otherwise I can't make sense of the full list. Of course, there are spreadsheets where I get all these coefficients. Now, what is the Eigenvector centrality? Eigenvector centrality is that it is the power network. The power network is like if I know people who themselves have lot of followers, who themselves have lot of retweets, and then if they are retweeting me, then what happens is that I have a very efficient network. I have the power. I don't need to know too many people, but the people I know are themselves influential. So that is what is indicated here. As is obvious, Priya Ramani, she was one of the anchors because of the legal case and one of the top names being outed by her in the movement. But then there were other influencers who played their role, and they were part of the network. There are other dimensions which I had taken into the research, which is the reply network, the trolling behavior in the movement, how the information went over time, and how the network structure evolved over time because more people participated and how it became a movement. And then there are spillovers on the uh, real life, or spillovers on the reality rather than just restricting to Twitter. So how it affected the help given to victims, how it affected the changes in policies, how it affected the so this is the final full graph. As you can clearly see, the whole activity is driven by these 4 5 top influencers or top names. Those of you who have followed the movement could be able to guess them, or we can discuss them offline. But uh, it is one of the visualization which tells its own story pretty neatly. So this is where the legal network, as you would notice, this is much different from the Me Too network or the Bollywood network. There is very low clustering. These are people competing with each other. Unlike Bollywood, where they collaborate with each other to do a movie, the way the data set is structured, here the people are competing with each other. And of course, there are news sites, legal news sites on Twitter, and then their respective journalists who only tweet each other, and then who only so there are these all different scattered stuff here. So I'll skip this, but these are again more insights around their centrality and betweenness and who is acting as a broker, who is more popular, more so prominent names of lawyers, Prashant Bhushan, Indra Jay Singh, of course, they are the most popular and prominent. The last what I have is 2019 election. Yes, a lot has changed, and these are big challenges for me because these are the new things, the volume and the more hate and trolls, and there is a more use of images. So we have to use artificial intelligence and computer vision to decode the text out of the image before we start interpreting. So because of that heavy use of images, and thanks to IT cells of the political parties, they put out so much of memes, so much of this image content, that we have to first do that extra step. So this is the outcome of that, and this is how a particular set of people, they interact heavily to trend a topic. So this is based on a vast collection of trending topics, and then using uh, these uh, these analysis, we try to identify whether the trend is how the trend is being engineered. So I stop here. If any questions, we can.
I think we, yeah, a huge round of applause for Sandeep. Uh, we have time for a couple of questions. I'm sure this is an interesting topic as well as a visualization topic, lots of insight. A few questions. Yeah, sure.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Sandeep sir. It was a very interesting talk. I'm personally interested in this topic myself. I've done some very what do you call it, minor amount of work in this. That's it. So, do you see only Twitter as a primary repository of information, or now that Twitter has just celebrated its 10th anniversary, 12th anniversary recently, do you foresee any other further data mines that we can look into for more information? I mean, I'm sure Facebook is already there, but it's already tainted by a lot of fake information and stuff. So we'll have to use some amount of filtering there. A lot of our personal judicious nature to check that out. So how do you foresee more repos of data coming in, and what can they be? And additionally, newspapers and other media outlets and all, right? Do you see them also as viable sources of information, or are they all just copying each other and you don't see them as useful repos?
Okay, so quite a few points that you made. So one is the other social media. As I also made a comment during the talk, that Twitter allows more public sharing. So if you have a closed Twitter account, it is pretty much like only to yourself or one more person or two more people. It doesn't really have much activity. You can't really do much. Unlike say Facebook, where people want to close it only to their friends and not open their post to the public. So that limits the amount of data that you can collect through API. And if you see, even for public conversations, Twitter is the source where we go. Facebook is more like sharing with the family and friends. Even same way for Instagram, it is more around images, more around picture, but not for conversation or debate. Though I agree that even Twitter conversations are not the kind of conversations which would add value to us these days. But then at least everything is out in the public. Everything is available for social network analysis or understanding the conversation. The second point that you made is that where else can we use this? So if yesterday we covered a lot of examples from other things. So if you look at NLP, in a way, NLP is also that the words hang together. The words are also having relationships. The words co-occur with each other. The words have a relationship in terms of semantics or their meaning, or the words have relationship in terms of replacing each other, so they are equivalent words in that sense. So words can form a network. There is also a research paper I shared yesterday that is around the food ingredients. So which food ingredients go with each other, and why strawberry and mushroom are not put together in the recipe together by anyone in any recipe. So those are the kind of insights which you can get those data sets simply by collect. So this researcher had collected the data from a recipe website, and then using all the ingredients which go together in the recipe, they all have a relationship with each other. So using that as a context, and that is a very popular research paper. Same way, there are network analysis within the organization where you do a survey, and using the survey question, so whom are you having lunch with? Okay, so if those kind of questionnaires are filled and those kind of questions data is available. So even I did an exercise in my own company where we asked a bunch of new joinees a questionnaire. So we said that whom do you stay with? They were sharing rooms with each other. Who is your reporting manager? They have common reporting manager. Do you sit on the same floor? And do you come from the same college? I am or this. So we got those 8, 10 different questions which had those social. Did you have lunch with whom you had lunch with in last 10 days. Okay, so like that, you ask few questions and you can generate a data set which is good for network. And guess what? In those 30 people who were there as part of the class in the company, the insight came out that if you are sharing a room, then you know the other guy inside out and your trust levels and your uh, friendship levels are extremely high. So you use those metrics to build out that those people come to the center of the network and they have these close association. So there are those ways where you can generate this data. There are APIs, there are scraping available, there are surveys that you can do. And otherwise, I have reasons to have a bias towards Twitter because of the richness of data from a researcher point of view. And it is like unbiased, it is public.
Okay, we're going to stop here because we're out of time. A huge round of applause for Sandeep. He's going to be around. I know there are a few hands going up, so catch him in the break. We're going to break now for tea. When we come back, we'll follow on the similar theme of how we can use technology to handle